Hello, I'm Dave McCoy, and you've tuned in to the Emerald Water Anglers podcast, Undercurrent.
It's about time to get serious.
Okay. I'm not good at being serious.
You're not?
No.
Oh,
I
I'm
hate to...
dead serious to see this face.
Yeah, I can tell. It's frightening. Yeah.
I know. Like,
I'm just going to straighten up right
now.
now.
My morning beverage here. It'll put a slight arc to that straight face.
Okay.
Wow. Here we go.
Here we are.
So, Tim.
Yes.
Arsenault.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, because I've never met you before, and I don't know anything about you.
Oh, yeah. I'm a guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
from
good. I wasn't going to gender check you.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I'm originally from Summerside, Prince Edward Island, but I've lived out on the West Coast for the most of my adult life. And got into fishing along the way, and really liked it a lot, and then ended up managing a fly shop right in downtown Vancouver called Michael & Young Fly Shop, and got into designing lines, and really like spey casting a lot. And
So, how old are you?
I'm 44.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not that far behind me.
No, I'm, yeah.
But you are behind me.
Yeah. I'm nipping at your heels, though, right?
Yeah, not quite.
Okay, all right.
I'm older than you think.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean,
You look good.
We won't go into
Yeah,
that.
okay, yeah.
So, so you grew up in Somerset? Is that what you said?
Summerside.
Summerside, right?
Yep.
Where is that?
Prince Edward Island. So that's
Okay.
almost as far east as you can go in Canada, like as extreme far east. Yeah, it's kind of.
What brought you to the West Coast?
My parents, they just my dad and my mom left there, and there was better, I think, economic opportunities for them on the West Coast.
What did they do?
My dad, he's like a graphic art supply sales guy. So he sells maybe that's a little less than what he does, but he like sells printing presses and ink and plates and all that stuff. So, I think he had got a job offer out this way, and they moved out this way. First, they moved, I was born, we were there for a bit, and then they moved to Edmonton, where my brother was born. And then my dad got a job offer in Vancouver, and went to, we lived in the suburbs of Vancouver.
So what age was that when you?
Oh, boy. Would have started grade 1 out this way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it was grade 1 probably.
So effectively.
Yeah, a whole adult life. Yeah. We ended up going back, every couple summers for family reunions. My parents have really big families there. My mom and dad, my dad is one of 10 brothers and sisters. My mom is one of 10 brothers and sisters.
Holy crap.
And my mom's the second oldest in her family, and my dad is the youngest in his. Oh. So it's, I've got uncles that are like 70 years old, and I've got
aunts that are younger.
Yeah, it's all over the map. A really big family. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, really big family for sure. So we went back there a lot, spent a good portion of summers there, but yeah, love Vancouver, love the West Coast, love steelhead fishing, love everything that's there. So
when did you start fly fishing?
Gee,
was it back east or?
No. It was here.
Okay. Dad do it?
No, my parents didn't fish at all. So
what was your influence on?
That's a funny story, and some of you have probably heard it before, but. I have a buddy who I think his birthday was just, he was that kid in grade 9 that was 16 before everybody else. And so he got a car before everyone else. Wow. And he liked to fish. And we were both sort of marginal kids, so he would always want to skip school and go fishing. So he would be like, hey, let's skip school and go fishing, and that's where it started. It started skipping school with him, and then it just kind of went from there. My parents, I guess as really young kids, we had spinning rods, and we lived close to a little slough called the Nickel-Mackle, and we would ride our bikes down there and fish for coho and stuff like that. But it was once I met him and we started going, we started skipping school and going, better rivers. It kind of went from there. And then I got kicked out of school. not long after that. And he got kicked out too. And then we met again in the marginal kid program. Anyway, we started skipping school again and going fishing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's where it started. And we gear fished for a while and then found fly fishing. And then once I saw the first guy spey cast on the river, and I saw that and I thought that was just magic. And that would have been in the early 2000s. And I remember running into Michael and Young. I didn't work there at the time, but I was a customer. And I said to Dave, the owner of the shop, man, I saw this guy and he had this really long rod and he was making these really weird movements. And then all of a sudden his fly line would just shoot to the other side of the river. I couldn't believe it. And he goes, oh yeah, that's spey casting, you know? And I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. And I think they had like 6 of those rods at the time, right? You know, there wasn't that many. And back then it was kind of
Scott or something. Well,
they had some of the Sage stuff. And and I think a couple Scotts as well. But back then it was kind of like, you started with a 9-weight 14-foot, right? You remember these days, right?
Yeah, it was about as big around your wrist.
Yeah. And then you had your 10-150, your 15-foot 10-weight for the big fish, or your big rivers. And of course, as time went on, North American manufacturers, I mean, I think at that time we had a lot of European influence as to what we needed here. But as time went on, it seems like obviously the North American manufacturers decided to make stuff that was a little bit more applicable to what we do out here. And, I remember the first 7-weight, 13-foot 6 Sage and going, man, that's crazy. Like, that's such a light rod, right? And now there's 5s and 4s and 3s.
Well,
6s.
in those early days, the first rod I got was the Scott Arc.
The original Arcs. Yeah.
As they put it. 8140 to the rest of the world. Yeah. And the conundrum at the time, especially because I was guiding in Colorado at that very particular time, was, what line do you put on this? Yeah. And I remember, I'm not going to throw people under the bus on this, but put a 10-weight on there. Yeah. Okay. 10-weight, single hand line? They're like, yeah, I should do it. Nope. Not even close.
Close, yeah.
No, and that was in 96, 97. So there were not a lot of conjoined products from the line and rod world in those early days.
No. I mean, I think the first weight forward spey line to come out was Scientific Angler's Mastery Spey.
Exactly. And that's the first one I had.
And I think a lot of guys in my neck of the woods previous to that, this is predating by the time I came along, there were weight forward spey lines available. Right. It's pre-Skagit, but
Delta and Wind Cutter.
Yeah, totally. Mid spays, grand spays, that kind of stuff. So there was some stuff that was a little more modern.
Yeah. It accelerated fast once they
sure did. Yeah. And honestly, the Skagit line, and I think it was 2006, 2007, that coming out, I mean, I probably wouldn't have a job in spey casting if it wasn't for that. Like, that just blew it wide open. And all of a sudden everyone was spey casting. Previous to that, it seemed to me to be, it was rare to see, you were always kind of shocked when you saw it because it just wasn't something that you saw every day. And it was harder a little bit, right? But I mean, previous to up in our neck of the woods, previous to the Mastery Spey, the guys were fishing double tapers, from what I understand, up our way. Yeah, that was the popular thing to do.
Were they cutting heads and building their?
I'm sure someone was.
I mean, that's all we were doing around here for a while, was cutting in those earlier days. Cutting up Cortland products and joining them with some degree of welding or
splicing totally core splicing. Yeah, I think in our neck of the woods it was just a lot of double tapers. It seems. Talking to Dave, who's been spey casting as long, he owns Michael and Young.
And that's where you work, right?
Yeah, totally.
How long have you been working with Michael and Young?
Oh, gee, probably. I guess over 15 years now. Wow. I think I've been at the Vancouver shop since 2012. So that puts, I guess, 11 years roughly. And then I worked at a drywall accessories manufacturing plant for a lot of years.
Why did you leave that?
It's a question I ask myself a lot.
We can get to
I threw my future away, but I
think of where you'd be.
Yeah, I know. I would have less weight on me at this point. That was a more physical job. But I did. And then what I did is I worked a 6-day a week at Michael and Young. I worked on Sundays.
Yeah.
And back then they knew me as Sunday Tim because I was Tim. I was in that. So that I probably had done that for 4 or 5 years probably before I started at the downtown store. So so a long time. Like, well, maybe not a long time in the scope of.
So in that process of, I just in my head want to put it together.
Yeah.
You picked up fly fishing. And almost immediately went into spey. Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Somewhere in the early 2000s.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So then at that point, at what time? How long of a gap before you started working at a fly shop? A couple years?
A couple years, probably. Okay. Yeah, I think it was probably a couple years. And then I started sort of doing 1 day a week at Michael and Young in Surrey.
Did you guide in any of that process?
Never guided. Never guided. No.
Are you guiding now?
No. A lot of casting instructions.
Yeah, of course.
I like it because it's easier to find a good cast than a fish sometimes.
Really?
Or could be. Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other podcast.
Isn't it?
Right
yeah,
there.
I'm just kidding. Yeah,
No, you're not.
I'm just
that's
kidding.
Totally
I don't know. It's just
it's easier to see it's easier to accomplish or exceed expectations with a casting lesson a lot of times than it is with an actual.
There's less.
Trip.
Yeah. Well,
expectations are coming in lower typically.
Totally. You got fish that need to cooperate.
Yeah.
You've got weather that needs to cooperate. The casting instructions, it's just like, we can do it in a field, we can do it in a river, we can, and generally I can help. Usually I can help.
Right.
I try hard to help in my instructions.
That's the whole point.
That's the idea. Yeah, totally. I'm not good enough to be a guide, though. I the casting instruction is as far as I can go.
I'm not a good enough.
No.
Wow.
No, I'm not that good at fishing.
Can we just have a moment of silence and let that just set in really quick?
7 p.m. to 7.
Okay, that's perfect because I just want that to resonate.
Okay.
I'll leave my personal feelings on that out. But,
did I offend?
No, not whatsoever. I think it just beckons a conversation again, probably a whole other podcast of, in Washington to be a guide requires, actually go back to the time.
Yeah, for sure.
It cost you $175. And bam, you were a freaking guide.
That was that.
That was it.
Right.
You didn't have to have CPR. You didn't have to have insurance.
Right.
You didn't have to have anybody show you how to row a boat.
None of that.
You didn't have to have anybody qualify you to spell fly fishing.
Nothing.
Didn't have to.
Way you go.
You didn't have to pass a grammar test.
Really?
Nothing.
So what does it take these days?
Well, it's slightly better.
Right.
It's more.
It's more. Yeah.
It's more. It's double that or a little bit more. And then you actually do have to provide some degree of certification for CPR, first aid.
Right.
What I consider kind of a minimal amount of liability insurance.
Right. You'd have to have insurance too, right? Yeah.
But still, there's nobody, saying, so you like fly fishing and you decided to make yourself a guide.
Right.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Terrific.
But to stay in business, you have to be good, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's just abandon this.
Okay. Yeah. I know about casting, but I
may not even know about that.
Yeah, I may not even. Yeah.
You just have an affinity for fishing, and that qualifies you to guide. So
fair enough. Okay.
All right, we're done.
Okay. Moving on.
Moving on. So. You never guided. You just teach.
Just teaching.
I dig that. I think that's awesome. The hard question.
Yeah.
Actually, no, this isn't the hard question. Hard question will come in a second.
Okay.
So you have your own fly line company.
Yes.
It's all spey.
Yeah.
Is it going to stay all spey?
Yeah. I mean, spey is my passion. So I mean, I'm just following sort of that obsession.
Yep.
And if my obsession changes at some point, I'll probably follow it that way. But, I think when you're doing something on the side, when you already work so much, it's really important that thing is just, it doesn't feel like work when you're doing it, or it feels less like work. So my love of spey casting and my interest in how lines work really allow me to come home after a long day of, work and continue to work, into the night, right? Or get up early and go ahead. Yeah. So,
why work 8 hours a day for someone else when you can work 16 a day for yourself?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. There you go.
And not get as much money for it.
No. So, I mean, possibly I have had some ideas about some like single-handed spey lines, some stuff like that. I think possibly we could go there. But generally speaking, I mean, it's a spey company, and spey is my passion. And
what's it called?
Bridge Fly Fishing Products. Bridge Outfitting is the website. And so it's Bridge.
How'd you come up with that name?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's funny, like, it's always funny trying to find a name for something. Boy, like, you go over it a lot.
Yeah, you do.
And a lot of opinions and a lot of back and forth. And, I'd kicked around a bunch of names. And so we were looking at like Cascade fishing, or like Cascade fly lines, because Cascade Mountain Range. But there was like some other companies involved with fishing that had that name. And there was a few other ones. And I spent a ton of time fishing the Thompson, and a lot of time in Spence's Bridge. Mm-hmm. And one day we were at the shop. It was Aaron, who works at the shop all the time, my other friend Zach, and we were kicking names around. It was near closing time, and I can't remember who said it, but someone was like, it'd be kind of cool to call it like Spence's Bridge spey lines, or Spence's Bridge lines. And then I can't remember who said it, but someone was like, well, what about just Bridge? And we all kind of like nodded at each other, but at that point we were kind of like locking the doors up, and it was time to go home. And I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, it's a great, it could be a great name. Mm-hmm. And the more we thought about it, some of the ideas that pertain to the lines I made first. Mm-hmm. My main stem head, it's a line it's a long floating line. And so I wanted to make something that was traditional in nature, but had a modern performance, a modern take on it. And so we started thinking, a bridge is like connecting the past and the future, right? Mm-hmm. They're symbols of strength. They're symbols of, technology and nature. They're meeting places.
Unity.
They're put-ins for us. They're takeouts for us. So the more we examine that name, as we looked at it in the context of the products that we started, mm-hmm. and then just in fishing in general, it just made even more sense. And we kind of were like, let's definitely go with this. And cool. It just went from there. Yeah. And awesome. I think it seems to fit. Yeah. We really Fantastic. Like it. Yeah.
It's cool. It's always fun to hear how somebody comes up with what the impetus or the catalyst is for drumming up the initial name and where it evolves from there.
And it can be a long journey.
Yeah.
Because once you're going to go with a name, it's kind of frightening, because it's like you're going to base, that's your name. And if you build momentum and you build a culture and you build something, you can't, it's hard to change that.
Yeah, you
right?
don't want to rebrand yourself in 5-10 years or something like that.
I think that's something you want to build out of stone, not out of sand, right? Yeah, something that's going to stand the test of time. Yeah,
totally. So you mentioned a couple of things in there in the process of that I kind of wanted to touch on. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the Thompson River.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the Pacific Northwest, especially that have fished spey as long as we have, and have been in the steelhead game as long as we have, really have held the Thompson as the river to go fish for big wild steelhead in the general Pacific Northwest of this continent.
For sure.
What's its state now?
Not good. As probably most people know at this point, the river closed sort of for good a number of years back. We have a test fishery in the lower Fraser River. Mm-hmm. And so at Albion, which is a location on the Fraser, and so they're they basically do a test set, a netting, in regular intervals, and then they count the fish that are in the net, and they use those numbers to enumerate the amount of fish that are going up the river. And they try and extrapolate that just with the science they have to say, one fish in the net equals this many fish upstream.
For geographic purposes, at past that point, how many other rivers can the fish actually migrate into?
Well, there would be quite a few, but at that time of the year, it's fall steelhead, right, and most of the lower tributaries of the Fraser don't have those. So generally, what they're measuring, what they refer to those fish as like interior steelhead. Yep. So they feel that they're going, well into the interior. These are fish that are going up the Chilcotin and the Thompson.
And
100%. Yeah, Clearwater.
Stuff like that trip.
For sure. So they try and enumerate that. So, the last few years, obviously the river hasn't been open, but, force of habit, you watch those numbers and you try and get an idea, before they closed it for good, that there was some, and I shouldn't say for good. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But they basically had said we're going to keep it closed unless enough fish show up in that net. And then the second we get enough fish in that net, we're going to open the river to angling, right? And I think that was around 10 fish. And then after they closed it, we saw some, really dismal numbers in the net. But then I think this year...
so really quickly, 10 fish in the net would deem that a fishable...
But back then, yeah, it would have.
What year was that?
Oh, I can't even remember. No, I think it was maybe earlier than that. I wouldn't want to say the years because I can't totally remember them.
10 years ago?
Between
5 and 10.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, hard to bring it up off the top of my head.
So
but,
at 10, if 10's the baseline, on that, what would be the dismal numbers?
Like 3 or 2 or something like that, right? But this year, I believe they got. I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think they got 10.
Really?
Which is a great improvement from a couple of years before. So it just goes to show. They're not going to open it with 10 now. Right. It's just I think it's gone maybe a little too far for that. But it has been a tough go for the Thompson. The fish.
How fast? You and I kind of mirror each other in timeline of when I moved to the Seattle area and you started getting into this. Right. How fast, and from what you can recollect, did you watch that particular river?
When I started fishing it, it was a good year if you had around 1,200 fish. And then it kind of it's
a massive river for 12.
Yeah. And we at that point, we were already probably fishing for crumbs at that point. And then it kind of went to 800, and I think 800 was their baseline for opening it for a long time. And then it just plummeted straight into the ground, it just went on a total downward curve and free fall, and it just that was it. That was all that there was to it, right?
It seems really quick.
Yeah, you're right. It does. For
in the grand scheme of things, hindsight, you look back and you're like I'm at an age where it's not like I'm looking back on a life lived well. I'm still living life well, and so in a matter of half of our lifetime or less, we watched it be.
It was fast. It was fast. It was really fast, super fast. And it makes me wonder if there's some, and there's a lot of people who can speak to this stuff a lot better than I can when it comes to numbers of fish returning, the issues that are facing those fish. But, a lot of our streams, there's been ups and downs, but certain ones they just curved right into the ground, and you have to wonder if maybe they have some other issues they're facing other than what we're seeing in some of our coastal streams.
Sure.
You know,
aside from just distance to travel, period.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you can speculate all you want.
Yeah,
what may or may not be.
No, and I mean
affecting that.
Absolutely. But clearly, you know, those interior Fraser steelhead, they have a lot of challenges. That's for sure.
Same with our upper river fish too.
Yeah.
A little nuts.
Yeah. Love the river though.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Spent a lot of time there. And
driving up to the Babine this last year and drove past a fair bit of that. Yeah. It was like, I remember now.
Oh, and what a neat place! Like,
it's an amazing place.
I spent a lot of time there and
keep the car on the road driving.
Oh, big time. You know, it was really special too because of the people that fished there.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, the Thompson's this big, long river.
Yeah.
But the amount of really good steelhead runs where the fish are, the percentage of that over the distance of the river, there's not, you know, for a famous fly fishing river that's so big, you know, most of the good runs are right around town.
Right.
And so it really focused a lot of big personalities in a very small area.
Yeah.
And then as time went on and the fishery unfortunately got worse, a lot of businesses in Spence's Bridge, you know, left or people moved away. And before you knew it, there was like only a couple places to stay and only a couple places to eat.
Right.
So you would have all these really big personalities not only packed into this really small area of runs, most around town, with a few on the outside, right? You know, there's some upstream and downstream, but generally speaking, the famous named pools are like right in town. Right. And then those same individuals would all have to go to the same place to eat. And then they would all be staying in the same hotel. Right. And so there was some clashes of some, you know, the Thompson, you know, I oftentimes think of it as like the Olympics of steelheading, because it is the most horrible river to wade ever.
It's a good one to swim.
100%. Yeah. And so, you know, we always joke, you know, you could cast really far there and catch fish way out there. And the river's so slippery. I always kind of thought of it as the Steelhead Olympics because it was like the long cast event, the deep wade event. Right. You know, if you hooked a thunderbolt, the 50-meter dash down the rocks to get to that to that fish.
The tail out.
Yeah. Oh, and we just thought of it as like the most extreme steelheading experience that we knew. You know, and so it wasn't easy to get fish there, but the fish were really coveted. Right. They were, you know, everyone wants to catch a Thompson steelhead. Sure. Everyone wants that picture on their wall, and me included. And so it drew people for a fishery that had a fairly low success rate for the average angler and was painful to fish. You know, it drew some big personalities.
So think back to the like prime time.
Yeah.
When you were there.
Yeah.
Memorable day and some of the people you were running into on the water at that time.
I ran into so many people there.
Especially early when, you know, you were Tim Arsenault. And just,
I mean,
cut your teeth with the
100%.
rod and
stuff. I remember running into Charles St. Pierre early on. I was coming out of the graveyard and he was sitting on the back of his truck. And he's such a cool guy.
He's a great guy.
Love that guy. If he's listening, I got to give you a call, Charles. It's been far too long. But I remember coming out of the graveyard, and he was sitting on the back of his truck, and he didn't know me, and I didn't know him, but we were steelheaders, so I guess that was good enough. So he had hot coffee, and he said, "Hey, how's it going? You want to have a coffee?" And I said, "Man, I'd love a coffee, right?" So we sat down and got to chatting, and I found out he was a Sage Pro staff, and these Sage VT2s had just come out, and he had or I think it was right before they came out. There was this blue color, and so he had those, and I was kind of like, "Oh, holy crap, man! Like this is crazy." And then he started showing me all these amazing pictures of Chinook that he had caught in Alaska. He's hosting all these trips, and I quickly found out I was talking to like a real legendary dude, right? Man, and what a great dude, right? Like just an awesome guy. And then you know, some of the listeners may know Gene Oswald. Gene is a pretty legendary spey caster in his own right. A lot of competition stuff. And he does Bruce and Walker two-handed rods here in Washington State, down in Tacoma. Legendary caster, really great guy. And I remember bumping into him. I was walking into the spur, and basically it's to get in there. Back then they blocked it off now, but you were right in town, and you drove down this funny little dirt road, and it would end at this little power station. And so we would all park down there, and then you just go over the hump, and the run was right there. And I'll never forget him because he had the Washington plates that said Steelheader on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of rolled up, and him and this other gentleman were having some beers. And they as well were like, "Hey, how's it going?" I go, "Really good." He goes, "You want a beer?" And I said, "I'd love a beer." And so he opened up the back of the truck, and he had all this like really cool microbrew stuff that you guys that were doing down here before we saw a lot of that stuff. So we had a bunch of beers, and I met him, and Chuck Gentry's another guy I ran into there. Tyler Kushner, Dana Stern. Man, there was just so many. It's hard to name. Like so many people. I mean, Matt Moisley, another super legendary Thompson angler. April Loki, met her there a lot of times. Steve Choate had a place right in town. A lot of the American dudes would stay at his place, and those guys would always be around, and they were all amazing casters. And I mean, as far as like a good day, I mean, any day, I think especially in the end, we realized like any day that you were allowed to fish there was a good day. Sure. And any day, I think any day you catch a steelhead is a good day. Get a lottery ticket on the way home. Anytime, any day, really. I mean, and
go back to what you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Being on the water.
Yeah,
rod in your hand.
That's a reward right there, right? Like, so many times, waited as far out as I could in the corner of the graveyard. There's a mountain there called Arthur's Seat, and it's just you just feel so small, right? And late in the afternoon, you're trying to save a day, eke one out at the end, and just being in that river, it being what it is. You just feel so small. And I think a lot of times in angling, I really like big waters and big landscapes. Mm-hmm. And I find that angling for me is meditative. And so I find like I'm at my happiest when I'm just sort of like existing. I'm not thinking about the problems of life. And so in that river, it demanded all of your attention. Right. If you did not want to go for a swim, if you wanted to make that cast.
How tall are you?
Not 5'10". Yeah, not tall. Yeah.
Did you have a little backpack with some rocks in it or something?
Oh no, I mean, we pushed it. I mean, we were really competitive too. It was just one of those places where it was just I've never experienced anything like it. Right. And it shaped me as an angler. My time there. Big time.
So on that short little stint there, pivoting to your lines, is that really was that the primary or just a mix, one of the things that mixed into making you create Bridge and like what was missing from our world to make you jump into the space of
for sure
fly lines and
so my time fishing in Spence's Bridge was where I fell in love with spey casting. That's where I saw the value of a long cast. I saw a long cast catch fish. I saw a long cast save days. And that's not something you typically see on rivers. Mm-hmm. Long casts cost you fish a lot of times. Yeah. I was
pocket picked on long
big time, right? So this was like one of these amazing few places in my life that I was lucky enough to spend some of my formative spey casting years there. That's where I saw the value of the long casts, and I fell in love with casting long, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where I think like I always loved casting, but I think the Thompson really ingrained that. So I mean that's where it started. My want or my interest in fly lines, so when I was fishing the Thompson, I got into like there was several brands of like sort of modern longer spey lines later on, like Nextcast, and then there was a really great company out of Scotland called Karen, and I loved their lines. When I first started competing, I those guys that were a part of the Karen team, they were like so good, like I just like couldn't believe it, right? And so what I would do is I was fishing Nextcast stuff, and this is later down the road when this stuff was available. I was already really into casting, and then I started once I started competing, I kind of learned that what a lot of guys were doing was taking these Karen heads and cutting them into tournament heads. They were buying like 11, 12, 95-foot Karen heads that were full lines, and then they were cutting them down till they were like 1,000 grains and about 72 feet. And that was a lot of people's sort of, totally. And so Travis Johnson, a really good buddy of mine and a amazing angler and guide and casting instructor. And oh yeah, he's a rad guy. I love him to death.
I'm good
Great
friends
dude.
with Travis too.
Lovely, lovely guy. So he had told me, if you buy the Karen lines and like the 65-foot heads, if you get an 8-9, you can cut that down and make like a mini tournament head for your like 13-foot 7 weight, right?
So a mini tournament head, how long it
would have been like, I don't know, probably like close to 60 feet maybe, or like 55 or somewhere in there, but longer, like a little bit longer, and especially with the shorter rod.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that's really cool. So that kind of stoked my interest in cutting lines and like altering lines. Okay. And then tournament casting really reinforced that, because tournament casting, the lines come like when I first started, there wasn't really commercially available tournament lines. Nextcast made one, but I was kind of looking at the guys doing the Karen lines and thinking that's kind of how I wanted to go. And then as tournament lines came out, they came too long and too heavy, and you had to cut the back of them until they fit the tournament rod that you had. And usually that would be in the 950 to 1100 grain range, somewhere between 68 and 73, 74 feet, probably at the longest. And that really kind of got me thinking about line design. And so I don't like to compare my lines to other companies, because I think that everyone's making a great product and all the products are very different. But yeah, I just wanted to make something that had, my main stem was the first line I designed. My buddy James Reed, who's a bamboo rod maker. He lived in North Van at the time, really good buddy of mine. He's moved to Campbell River since, but when I started designing lines, I didn't really know where to start. And so he was like, I can show you how to quantify a line. I can show you how to measure a line properly. And so he, showed me how to use a caliper and use graphing software, and how to find out what the shapes of these lines are, and how to, take a fly line that you like and measure it and put it on a graph and see the shapes in it and start to understand what shapes do what, right? And
how often with the caliper, what's the distance between grabs that you're using?
About a foot for me. That's where I like to be. And so anyway, he showed me how to do that. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool. And he was like really helpful in the early, because he would get like excited about it too. So and he understood a lot more about taper than I did, because I think like rods are tapers too. And so I would like make a line and graph it, and I would send him the graph, and he'd be like, I see a problem in there. Can you identify that? And then I'd be like, this? And then he'd be like, yes or no. And then I'd say, okay. And then I'd change it, and then I'd show it to him again. He goes, I want to cast that. Let's meet tomorrow morning, right? Before work. So we would it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun doing that. And yeah, he played a big part in it. And then
so let me ask you a quick question before you go further on that. So James would look at your graph that you sent him. And say, I see a problem in there. And so you were graphing an existing line, right?
Yeah, for sure.
At that point, when he said he saw a problem and you were trying to fix it, how did you go about fixing it? Did you just regraph manually what you wanted it to look like?
No. Yeah, so this is fun. So I don't know how other people do it, and because you can't go to school for this stuff, really. Thank you.
We're going to school right now.
Yeah. But I think like when it comes to like line designers and rod designers, we probably all have our ways of doing this stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, having worked in the industry long enough before I got into designing spey lines, I don't know, it was kind of a fortuitous bounce that I kept every spey line I ever owned. And any line anyone had ever given to me, I threw it in a drawer, whether it was cracked to shit or didn't matter.
Broken in half.
I'd take that and I'd throw it in a drawer. And so what I had done was I had made something on the graph that looked like it should work. And James sort of agreed that looked like a decent design to start with. And so, you know, there's this really great little book Al Burr wrote called Designing Fly Lines. I think it's a little paper book thing. It's maybe 30 pages.
Good luck finding one.
Yeah, I have one. Yeah. But he's got this great graph in it that tells you for floating lines, like for the diameter, what the grain should be. So by my graph, I could kind of extrapolate what the final grain weight was going to be on this taper. And then I kind of knew that at the front it would have to be a certain diameter to carry the payload I wanted it to, which in this case was a monofilament leader.
Of what length?
Of 12 to 15 feet.
Okay.
Right? So the main stem's a longer, more classical stuff. Exactly. Yeah, totally. So we knew the front would have to be, so you knew that to get the weight that you'd need a certain diameter at the back to give you that weight. And then you knew at the front it would have to be a certain diameter. And so between there, that's where the design happens.
Right.
And so I started messing around. And so what I ended up doing, the way I did it, and I don't know if other people do it this way, but this is the way I did it, is I basically graphed out that line, and I found out, I made every section. So like I would go through my library of old fly lines with a caliper and say, I need to find a piece that over 1 foot tapers from 072 to 074. And I'd find it and I'd label it like number 1, number 2, number 3. And I had all these
tape it off.
Oh, it was
cut. You didn't want to cut it.
Oh no, I'd cut it right out of it.
Right there.
So then I'd have a 1 foot section, right? And so I went through that line, that 60-foot line at that point, and I found all 60 of the sections that I needed to taper from, this to that. Right? Because over each foot, the taper's changing, right? And so I had enough fly lines that I could cut enough up to I found all the pieces.
So one more question, because you just said something that I was going to ask anyway, which is, you're talking about a 60-foot head. Mm-hmm. Head.
Mm-hmm. In an 8.9,
And you're saying that over that entire 60 feet, foot by foot, moving from the back to the front, you're going to see a degree of taper from foot 1 to foot 2.
There's certain places where it'll be flat depending on your design. Okay. But
depending on what you're trying to accomplish with the delivery.
Exactly, Or where exactly. So
how much power you're trying to drive out to the end.
Exactly, all that stuff. So what I did is I then took all those pieces and I cut them all on a bias, and I took super glue and I glued them together. And I glued that 60-foot line together out of super glue. 60 glue points all the way through it. And
using braid or something?
No, we just super glued. So you would just, like a fly line, you just cut it like that, and then the piece that you're going to attach, cut it the same. And so you've got these 2 long biases, and then just squish them.
Kind of like James would do for his bamboo rods.
Yeah, it's like a splice. It's like a splice joint. Yeah, and I just used a green Zappa-Gap, and so that's how it worked. And to this day, that's still how I make lines. Like that's how I am able to make a prototype, and at least see if what I'm thinking is even going to work at all.
Right. So that's the first process, right?
Yeah, totally.
You have to, in your head, have an idea what you want.
Yeah.
Based on the obvious criteria.
For sure.
Rod.
Yeah.
Distance.
Yeah.
Length of leader.
Yeah.
you're throwing a tip or you're just throwing a leader.
All those things change.
How heavy is the fly and at what distance is the leader?
All that stuff.
Pound test, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So you go through the process of maybe making some of those a constant so that you can hyper focus on what that head's going to look like for that exact situation.
Yep, pretty much. And then you make something,
and then once you make that, whether it's by splicing and super gluing, when did you realize you had something that you really liked that otherwise didn't exist out there?
Well, I wouldn't say it didn't exist. I mean, there
didn't exist exactly.
Not exactly how I.
That's what I mean.
So the idea behind my lines was like, I wanted to have a line that this line anyway, the main stem. I wanted a line. The goal was to have something that retained a classical fly line, a classical longer head feel, but had some modern hallmarks of design. A little bit more weight feel, a little bit more speed, a little bit stronger turnover, edging towards some of the things I was feeling in some of my tournament lines when I was casting them, right? And so we essentially, just like I said with Bridge, the original idea was like, especially with that line, was to make a line that connected the past and the future, something that was traditional minded, but had modern designs in it and modern performance in it.
So give me an example of that. What was it from that traditional that you modified a little bit in your first head?
Length shorter, a little bit shorter, more diameter in the back to give more weight feel, right? Steeper tapers in the line.
Steeper. So our sport is king of creating vernacular that doesn't necessarily have boundaries as to interpretation of what it really is. Steep, you mean aggressive tapers?
Yeah, aggressive tapers. Tapers that are stepping down quicker. Compound tapers, so several tapers within the line. Exactly. Whereas like you look at a double taper and it's flat almost all the way through, and then it's got a short steep taper on either end of it. These have several steps in them, right? And I think it's important too to acknowledge, like,
this is the main stem.
Yes,
because that was your first one.
That was the first one. Yeah, exactly. So that was the first one, and we liked it pretty much right off the bat. James had he's got a pretty good understanding of this kind of stuff. So I think he had said from the graphic, hey, that looks good. You should maybe do that, right? And then we cast it, and a lot of us cast it. My buddy Merck cast it, and it split in half, and half of it went down the river because it's glued, right? And I still give him shit about that to this day. And then it was fine. I just remade the front. I had the map, right? I just had to find all the pieces again. Turns out I have a lot of fly lines, so it was okay. And nowadays people donate me all their old spey lines. I'll get a guy come into the shop. Hey, I got 10 spey lines for you, and he'll drop off some old wind cutters and stuff, and I still use that stuff. But I remember he was casting it, and it split in half, and half went down the river, and I had to remake the front of it. But we tweaked it, and took about a year of messing with it and just letting a lot of different people of different skill levels and experiences cast it. And eventually we kind of came together and went, I think this is a pretty good line. I think we should make this, right? And that one just kind of went from there. And it's that was my first one that I made, and then I made the tributary after that.
So main stem, before we jump to the tributary, the main stem. So I remember casting that for the first time, and I'm going to be the first to admit that when I was early guiding steelhead, I was staunchly against the early Skagits. I felt like you needed to learn how to cast before you were given granted permission to make it easier on yourself by shortening
the staples easy, right?
Exactly, right? And so the irony in that is I've modified my cast over the years to accommodate shorter heads.
Of course. Yeah.
Scandies, back scandies, stuff like that. And I'm an okay caster.
Yeah.
And so main stem comes out and I cast out the first time, I'm like, I've kind of forgotten how to throw this shit.
That's okay. Yeah.
So I had to kind of chop myself off at the knees and step back into the game a little bit.
Totally.
And this goes less into the technical side and more into the why.
Right.
But, we've already talked about the Thompson being a huge influence on you.
Yeah.
Personally and professionally and everything.
Yeah.
And certainly on the first line that you came out with.
Yep.
You had to see, because how long's Bridge been out? 4 years?
5, I think. 4, 5.
Right.
I'm so bad with dates.
Me too.
I should know that,
but even 5 years ago,
yeah,
the pendulum was still swinging pretty aggressively towards the bottom of shorter rods, shorter heads across almost the entire industry.
For sure. Yeah.
So how, and not how, why, and what possessed you to decide not only start your own fly line company, but choose to force people, my favorite word is compliance.
Right.
Force people back into the train of thought of longer rods, longer heads.
Sure.
And just so, because we haven't really covered it yet, the main stem isn't intended to throw sink tips.
No, it's a floater.
So that means that the whole idea of dredging your ass for 15 feet of T27, if you know Simon, I think you can get some of that.
Yeah, totally.
For your steelhead, especially in Washington rivers, a lot of them. You're in the top 6-8 inches of the water column on the swing.
Yeah.
So how and why?
Yeah.
What, why, how possessed you to decide to go that direction with this?
Number one.
And having a drink of beer.
No, it's all good. This is good. We're laughing. We're having beer. Are we in the AM hours still? No, we're up.
No, we're PM somewhere.
So it's we're allowed.
In Prince Edward Island, we're fine.
Yeah, exactly. We're well into the drinking hour.
Australia, we're fine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just yesterday or tomorrow.
Exactly.
Tomorrow.
So the predominant reason I started with that one was because that's what I like to do.
Exactly.
And so I knew that it would be really hard for me to be super passionate about designing a line and starting something like this without it being just selfishly what I wanted to fish and like what I wanted to do. And so it started there. But also, I think, like
feel free to be as candid as
sure. I really try the best I can to promote to people the idea of taking part in the lifetime learning journey that is spey casting and fishing for steelhead. And I think that these days there's not a ton of fish around, and it's not, if the only thing that's bringing you joy in a day of fishing is getting a fish to the bank, that's getting harder and harder to come by. And I think there needs to be more things we enjoy during a day of fishing than just hooking a fish, because like I said, that can be pretty tough to get done these days. So like the old reels, the old flies, the longer rods, the longer lines, the challenge of casting the longer lines.
J.R. Reed bamboo rod.
Yeah, 100%. So for me, I really like, I just think, and don't get me wrong, like, for someone who's never spey cast before, using a Skagit line is a huge step out of the box of what they're doing. That can be as challenging to them as it is 80-foot belly for someone else.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I guess what I'm saying is, outside of the main stem and that stuff, is that I think it's really cool to always challenge yourself, right? To like always, and if fishing for me, like I was saying before, it's meditative, that those sorts of heads, like the main stem, keep me more present than lines that I find where I'm at, than lines that I find easier to cast. So I really, a couple reasons why. I think, a lot of people started spey casting during the Skagit Revolution, essentially, sort of in that 2006, 2007 era. And that was super important because if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have a line company today. That's super important that happened. That introduced a lot of people to spey casting that wouldn't be spey casting today. And those lines are...
Would you consider yourself included in that almost?
Well, I was doing it before that, and I was already fully addicted. Like it was too late for me at that point.
You'd already put the noose around your neck.
I was done.
Fair enough.
But what ended up happening is we just saw a massive influx of people start participating in spey casting.
Yep.
It wasn't as much of this arcane thing that you needed a ton of skill and a lot of this line came out that basically made it so, like anything, mastering the casting of a Skagit line could take many years.
Sure.
How would I put it? Like anything. So I just would say I always want to promote people challenging themselves, and I try never to look down on other types of lines and stuff like that, because where you are in your journey, if you're constantly challenging yourself and enjoying it more, and just taking part in the lifetime learning journey that is spey casting and fly fishing in general. Yeah. I think that's just a good thing for anybody. And, I've just finished designing this new head that I've got coming.
Don't go there
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, man, we got 2 hours left of this podcast.
No crack lines.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
Maybe not 2 hours, but you'd be amazed how verbose we can be about this.
Well, I won't talk about that. I just say that.
Not yet. I'm going to ask you out of here.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So basically, started that with that line because I wanted to, but also previous to that, I had really tried to. Oh, sorry, I got away from that. So yeah, I was saying the Skagit Revolution, right? So 2006, 2007, tons of people started spey casting, which is great. We love that. That's awesome. Yep. Great. A lot of people challenging themselves, going outside of their box, trying new things. Great stuff. So then a lot of those folks that started spey casting at that time, we're now quite a ways down the road. Okay. A lot of those folks are actually looking for lines like what we're doing, and they want to do that stuff. Yes. And so I think I knew that it would cater to that group of people as well. That I did see with companies like NextCast, and Karen was getting popular at that time, and I could see that there was a little bit of a push going to those longer lines too amongst
even the competitors at that level.
Yeah. Well, I just saw the average guy starting to take an interest in longer heads, at the shop, right? As later on, right?
So, I want to ask this question now, right there on that for a particular reason. You're in our shop, which first time here. Welcome. Thank you for
thanks for
driving all the way down here just to BS over beers and We'll buy you some Ritz crackers and cheese for lunch or something.
That's all good. There you go. Ritz crackers are my favorite. Yeah.
So that's a very important point, I believe, certainly from the retail side of things, because retail is kind of the conduit for everything that's being dreamt up out there for the most part.
Yeah.
And the general public.
Sure.
It still collides in the shops that are embracing everything that's possible out there that do exactly what you're saying.
For sure.
Trying to keep you invested in the sport. Yeah. And in spey in particular by challenging yourself. Don't just because you've mastered this and you can throw a bullet loop with a compact Skagit on your 11.5 foot.
Yeah.
Short spey rod.
Yeah, for sure.
Notice what I didn't say.
Yeah.
Why be satisfied with that?
Yeah, totally. I have a saying for this.
And you're seeing that more and more. We are too. I'm excited about it. I think it's as timely as possible. Whether it's the lack of fish and river closures driving that narrative because people realize they just still want that meditative time on the water, like you're saying.
Right.
and are caring less about the actual result and more about the process? Or is there something else going on that you see?
No, I think it's that. I think that's good. I mean, I would also say
you're a different region. I think BC has a little bit different mindset about this than say we do in Washington.
Yeah, you might.
And Oregon. I mean, not a lot, but certainly some.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you're seeing anything else as an input there that's maybe contributing to that shift.
Yeah, I just think it's been a long time. I think, your average guy that started spey casting, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, they're taking interest in some of that longer stuff. It's interesting stuff. And I always say this. No one started fly fishing for steelhead because they thought it was easier or they'd catch more. We all went to this to make it more challenging, in my mind, right? When I used to gear fish for steelhead, I caught a lot more fish than I do spey casting for steelhead. Yeah. But there's a value I place on the fishing in this manner for these fish, right? And I think that's just a theme that for a lot of people just carries on. Mm-hmm. And that's all, that's always, you would think that's always driving people to progress with their tackle choices and how they find their value with the time on the water. And certainly, there's nothing wrong with sticking with one thing too, right?
No, of course not. I mean, the last thing, it's funny because you say something,
right,
and then you hear yourself say it.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to somebody you don't know, that's maybe a new, like in the store,
sure,
or out on the water or something like that, and you don't know them real well, and you say something, then all of a sudden you got a quick retrospective of what you just said, and you're like, oh, did that sound judgmental? Because I'm not trying to be judgmental.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
For me anyway, there's a part of me that understands that if you can get past just this little tiny hurdle here, and I won't put a finger on exactly what it is, but a lot of times it's just one little tiny hurdle.
Right.
Maybe it's who you fish with all the time. Maybe it's, the fish not being as important. Maybe it's being willing to drive more than 20 minutes, maybe,
sure,
whatever it is. But if you can just sometimes get past that little hurdle, it frees up this long pathway to be able to engage at a higher level and enjoy for a longer period of time and continue to challenge yourself, right?
Totally.
And I find it difficult at times to deliver that message in a way that doesn't sound judgmental. Yeah,
totally.
Because that's not the point, like you said.
No, it's not. It's,
it's a personal choice on our end.
Totally. And I know anglers of every, working in the shop, it's just you meet so many different people. And, for some people, they only get out, a couple times a year. And for them, maintaining
valuable time.
Yeah. And for them, maintaining form with even a short skagit head or even OPSD skagit head can be a major challenge there.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's always really cool when it's really cool to challenge yourself. And to take part in the journey, right?
Yeah, totally.
Wrapping what would I say? I'd just say that's probably good enough. I mean, that's pretty much it.
No, that's awesome. So you come out with this main stem.
Yeah.
And half of us can't cast it. Because we're not Tim Arsenault.
What have I done? What did I do? Yeah, exactly.
Next line you come out with almost close to the same time. It wasn't that far after.
I think I got them at the same time.
I was going to say, I thought they came out.
I think they came out at the same time.
Tributary.
Yeah. Main stem. They were the same time. Yeah.
So give me a synopsis on why tributary.
So I wanted a slightly longer head that retained that same feel, but could be used on a shorter rod. So I was thinking a lot of some of the smaller summer steelhead fisheries we have, where we're using shorter rods.
Name a river or two, so people can contextualize it.
I don't want to make anyone mad here. When naming rivers.
Wenatchee.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there you go. He said it, I didn't. Thanks, Dave. That one's out of that one. That one's out of the way.
Bleep. Is it too late to bleep? Bleep. No.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That right in there.
Could believe
so smaller rivers. Same concept though.
Yeah, like
not a tip.
Not a tip line. Although later on I found out, I'll touch on that later. People, when you make tackle, one of the interesting things that happens is people take that tackle and they use it in ways that you would have never, or they just put stuff on the end of it that you would have never thought. And so
and make it work.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And it's really opened my eyes a lot because your intended use, it just doesn't always.
Well, it's your optic building it, right?
100%.
And it's to your, at the end of the day, fly fishing, outside of very few other endeavors, maybe the most subjective sport there is, even on the science side of outside of entomology, but the physics and stuff like that. How you get people to understand physics is biomechanically altered. It's age altered. There's so many different facets to that. So what somebody's going to go do with whatever there's almost no way you could envision.
No, there's limitless possibilities.
Literally.
And I have a good story about that. But basically the tributary was just a line that I wanted, if you had something that was like under 12 feet up to, maybe 13 feet, you could have a little bit of that long belly fun.
Feel to it.
With like going back like a mini long belly rig kind of. And then I also wanted a line that
which is pretty fun.
Super fun. I love that, right?
Easier on you because it's not as long a rod.
Exactly. And then I thought I wanted a line too that even if you were using a longer rod, say you did your Skagit stuff and that was great and you loved that, and then you did some Scandi stuff and you said I want to try long belly stuff, but like I don't think I want that crazy long head. Well, I wanted to make a head that
or buy a new rod to accomplish.
No, exactly. Change your life to do it, right?
As a shop, we kind of encourage people to do that.
Yeah, but then in this way, I'm giving you an out, right? So I know, yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Jeez, thank you
so this was a line that if you wanted to, use a longer head with your 13 foot or your 14 foot or your whatever, this would just be a great stepping stone between short and long, like a place that you could go there, and like with the longer heads, you'll find like snake rolls and single spays tend to be more the cast.
Sure.
And if you can snap tee them and double spay them, there's that stuff, but it can be a little difficult. It can be done, but
feels weird.
It can be weird. But the tributary head, it's not so long that if you're having a bad day with your snake rolls and your double spays, or sorry, your snap, or sorry, if you're having a bad days with singles and doubles, or singles and snake rolls, you can go and do snap tees and parry pokes. It's not so long that you can't do that or have difficulty with it.
What length is that on average coming in?
The 6.7's like 42, 7/8's 44,
That's so
8/9's 46. Well, no. Well, it's funny when you look back to when I started, the 55 foot long was the shortest line you could buy, right?
Keep going through this because I got a question I want to come back to about this whole thing.
Okay, cool. Well,
because it's absolutely fascinating. I think spey is God, if more people did it, you won't sleep at night.
No.
Thinking about all this stuff, it's crazy.
I was listening to Jack Hogan on a podcast the other day. He did a really great podcast with Matt Sapinski.
Yeah.
And he made this great point. He was like, before spey casting at Steelhead Camp, no one would talk about casting.
Right.
But once spey casting started, now when the fire gets lit and the scotch comes out and the cigars come out, it's lines, casting, rods. And so it's so true. It just drags you right in there.
I always tell people this, we do a ton of travel and even on day trips, what happens from launching point to redocking at the end of a day or a week-long trip or a 2-week-long trip or, Dex Canyon Camp on the Grand Run and stuff like that, 3, 4, 5 day trips.
Sure.
How much time sort of revisiting that trip is spent on fish versus everything else?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Check things out.
Yeah, right on.
Not much. There's occasionally some fish that sort of throws you a monkey.
Yeah, falls on its sword for you.
Yeah, exactly. It falls on its sword for you, gives you a story, but otherwise you're like, yeah, we caught fish, but there was this, oh my God, you know, and anyway, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Spey casting, it's like super, I don't know, it's just so gear orientated and technique orientated, and there's so much to talk about, and it's so much fun in that respect.
It's fascinating,
super fascinating. Yeah,
I mean, I think as you start to talk about the tapers, and I could literally sit here and really go deep on tapers with you, because how that taper, actually, I can't ask that question. I can't say that yet because I've got a question relevant to that coming up. But so those two lines came out at the same time.
Yeah.
Took the line.
Yeah. Wintertide. Yeah.
What's the purpose there?
So the purpose there, that line. So
average.
I think an 8, 9, the 550 comes in at 32 before you put a tip on it. 7, 8, I think is 30. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing numbers out there.
It's now starting not to be quite as daunting for the average newbie to spey cast.
No, and so what I guess the thought behind that one was I was like, okay, if you want to really dredge and you want to throw big flies, there's already a great line for that. It's a Skagit line. Most major manufacturers make one. It's unlikely to ever be a better line for that type of fishing than that kind of head.
Right.
And so I thought to myself, when I first started spey casting for steelhead, we were using wind cutters and deltas.
Yep.
And then some of us were using like mid spays where you could remove the tip if you wanted it longer. And then I even knew guys that were cutting back XLTs for 20 feet for tips and doing stuff like that. So, but I spent a lot of time with a delta spey.
Yep, me too.
And I spent a lot of time with a wind cutter.
I think the delta was pretty revolutionary.
Oh, it was an amazing line. Incredible. Yep. Another one for Deck Hogan there, I believe. So
kind of knew what he was talking about.
A little bit. Yeah. Amazing. Incredible. So anyway, I thought back to myself, a lot of this in my zone, a couple of steelhead fisheries I frequent, the tips don't need to be super heavy, and we're finding the fish kind of like way back in tailouts and shallower stuff.
Love that.
It's really awesome. It's really cool. And in that kind of zone, maybe 10 feet of T11 would be the most we'd ever use, and there's a lot of like 10-foot type 6. 15-foot type 3.
You're getting them later in the swing.
Yeah.
Closer to hang down.
Or further out, but way back in the tail out where it's literally just breaking into the riffle. Okay. Where it's its shallowest.
Because there's that line that comes all the way across that tail out. You can sit anywhere along that.
And in these particular fisheries, you learn pretty quick because you're floating. And you're noticing you're going over these tailouts and boom, they scatter, and you're like, oh man, back here? You got to be kidding me, right? Like, yeah. So type 3s, type 6s, and these were the kind of tips that I started with. Like, you would buy a wind cutter set, and you get the type 8, the type 6, the type 3, and that you could buy those. You probably remember the original wind cutter. It had two floating sections you could remove, and Rio offered 24-foot tips back then. The big boy tips, they call them.
Yeah.
And so
that's it. Oh yeah, we're in good shape. Okay. We got 2 hours left.
So I thought about. So I thought about, I like fishing like that, and it reminds me of how we used to fish. Like back then, we thought a big fly was a 2/0 black GP tied on a hook. Right. And so I thought to myself, how cool would it be, like if you look at a 55-foot head and you take the 15-foot tip off, you're looking at, I'm not very good at math, but like 40 feet, right? 55. So I thought, what if we shortened it up just a little bit from there and we made the payload capacity more for these lighter tips and these lighter flies, right? And, what if we, basically I thought, in these
tail out fishing, not
100%. No, and not, not in the crazy stuff, And to me, that was my classic introduction to winter steelhead fishing. And so I wanted a line that sort of like, again, bridged back to those times with maybe a little bit more of a modern-esque feel to it, where it's a little shorter, maybe a little more diameter in the front, maybe a little more diameter in the back. And I wanted it to be a line that, like, if the payloads are light, it single spays and snake rolls really well. And if you want to use a longer rod, that extra length is going to help you keep your anchor. 14, 15-foot rod, it's going to be easier to keep your anchor with that. But I wanted something that definitely wouldn't be so long that it would not be at home with Perry pokes, snap tees, double spays, all that kind of stuff.
So with wintertide, personally, if you were going to fish it, like go out the river that you built this line with it in mind, it's the heaviest tip you're going to put on that. What length is it?
Well, I designed it to do,
for you.
For me?
Yeah. For you.
Well, I Chinook fished with it last spring with T18 on it.
Okay.
And an intruder.
10, 12?
12 feet of T18.
12 feet T18. And it turned over?
Oh, yeah. Everyone else hated it.
I mean, you know how to cast.
Yeah.
It's 10.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
So what I'm getting at, though, is that, like, much of what a line's capable of lies in the hands of the dude who's casting
without question.
But saying that, what I actually designed it for was about a maximum of 10 feet of T11.
Okay, that's all I
10
wanted
to 12.
To hear was because I think that's that subjective side.
Totally.
That I think that without question, Matt and I are in this extraordinarily luxurious position where we know you personally, and we've had your lines since their inception for the most part.
You did, yeah.
And thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And we've been able to go out and fiddle.
Yeah.
Play around, and without question, I'm not at your level of casting, not even close. I would never pretend to be. And what people need to understand is that subjectivity level comes with exactly what you said, is who are you?
Yeah, totally.
As a caster. And it's not a judgment on
No.
This is that lifelong journey.
Yeah, where are you at as a caster?
Where are you as a caster right now?
Totally.
And do you want to challenge yourself now with that? Or do you want to nail your casting on that head with what it was ideally built for?
Right.
Before you really start challenging it, because that's effectively challenging you. Yeah,
exactly. I would say that's entirely accurate. Enjoy your journey as a spey caster. Yep. Again, going back to people taking the tackle and doing other things with it. It's shocking what can be done. But as a designer, what you tend to do is you tend to manage expectations, right? You give people a baseline starting point of what the line's designed to do. Yep. And then stepping up to, you might be surprised to find that 10 feet of T14 isn't too bad with it either, right? Sure. 12 feet. I just wanted to design something that would be essentially a slightly longer finesse-y winter steelhead fishing line.
Love it.
Yeah, just
Love
something that
finesse-y.
Yeah, just something that operated well with single spays and snake rolls if the payloads were light enough, right? And then the heavier the payloads got, you can switch over to snap tees and double spays, which those casts, Perry pokes, what they're really great at is they're great at predictably extracting large payloads that are sunken in the water and putting them down where they need to be, right? Because
delivery system.
Yeah.
Not finesse per se.
Yeah.
But delivery system.
Yeah. Like those casts are, when you try and single spay 14 feet of T14 and a weighted intruder, the hardest
with a loop knot.
Yeah, so it's the hardest part of that is getting the anchor to land where you want it to,
because it has to land precisely.
It does. So lighter payloads with those casts are easier to predictably put it down. Yep. With the great thing about Perry poke, snap tees, and again double spays is they're great casts for pulling that stuff up to the surface and putting it down in the same spot every time. Right.
They get it in the corridor.
Exactly.
So all the energy is linear when it leaves the rod.
100%. Yeah. Everything lines up essentially, right? So I wanted something where you could do a little bit of both. But the idea just being let's enjoy some more finessey, a little bit longer winter seal heading. And if you need to dredge, if that's where you're at and that's what the deal is, that line is out there. Sure. It's out there.
So on finessey, I'm going to press you on this a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Finessey, my personal interpretation of that is you can slap me if you want.
Oh, you don't. I won't.
Because I'm wearing my tweed cap that says bridge on it, and I've got my little bow tie on, and I've got a pipe sticking out the corner of my mouth here.
Totally.
Finessey to me means that when that line comes off the water, leaves the rod tip, it has a feel and a look to it that emulates what spey casting is.
Sure. Yeah, I could say that. Yeah.
Tight loops.
Yeah, for sure.
You can still throw a tight, dynamic laser beam loop with that, even with that sink tip on there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great for that. I think it retains a bit of a classic style line feel. Yeah. That's what we wanted it to do. I didn't want an overt weight feeling near the back of the head. Like the more weight you pack closest to the rod tip, the more of a weight feeling you get.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing. I think it helps people to feel the line.
Essential.
It is.
In my opinion. I assume you agree.
Yeah, but stepping down that diameter back there, having enough weight, but not an overt weight feeling.
You're not advantageously giving the caster help by overweighting the back of it. They still have to be dynamic in the rest of the caster.
For sure. And I think it's also lending to that more classical feeling of a line, right?
Totally.
If I could classify it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Covered winter tide?
Yeah. All three.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yes.
All the things that we've spent an hour and 20 minutes talking about.
Yes.
Maybe an hour talking about.
Hour 20
away.
Well, but the first like 20 we're talking about insignificant things like where you were born.
Stuff that doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's all the past.
Who cares?
Who cares about that?
Cares about that stuff.
But like what we've been talking about the whole time is, really how bridge is your brain on a fly line.
Yeah.
Your affinity for this sect of the sport in heads for spey casting specifically, right?
Yeah.
So there's a new line coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, a little different than the other ones, isn't it?
It is a little different.
Yeah.
I've been pretty good on my language, but I'm gonna drop it right there. I about shit my pants when I put this new line on the rod.
Yeah.
The rod that I like to cast.
It's as addictive as crack.
It is.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like it.
What's it called?
It's going to be called the Torrent Head. So we finally came to a name on that. Names for lines can be as frustrating as names for companies.
Did you lose out to existing names elsewhere in the world?
There was definitely other names, but that one I thought it was kind of cool because it's like, a torrent is a heavy current.
Sure.
It's a rushing water, which is what we can find sometimes on our coastal winter steelhead fishing rivers. Yep. So I thought it spoke to the power of water and stuff like that. I've made essentially what is a somewhat of a Skagit head basically, which is a real break from what I've been making in the past.
Why?
The reason I did this head was, number one, I still fish like that sometimes. Like, I'm not like a long line all the time kind of guy, especially when I'm on a trip somewhere.
Is it because you're getting older?
No, it's just because I am getting older. But I've always really, it's in my time in spey casting. I know you are, yeah. I've always taken part in every trend that came along. I never said like, that's dumb. Like, I always thought that all those things were a tool in your toolbox.
Sure.
And that they would all be valuable to learn and all would add to your skill set and your understanding of casting and your understanding of the tackle. So I spent time with Scandi heads. I spent a lot of time with Skagit heads. I've spent a lot of time with longer heads now. And so like I'm not going to go, like it's unlikely for me to go to a river that's 200 feet wide that has these beautiful flowing tailouts and cast far and strap on a head that's 23 or 24 feet long. I'm probably going to use one of my winter tides, or even if it's a river where I really don't need depth, I might go to my main stem with a slightly weighted fly on the end of it, or a tributary head with like one of those scientific angler sonar poly leaders, like a type 3 or type 6 on the end of it. Yep. But if I go to a small winter steelhead river that's got a lot of trees around and it's really technical.
We have a few of those.
Oh yeah, they're around. Yeah. Like I love fishing that type of head and that kind of stuff. I love the whole okay, there's trees everywhere, so you got to stand here, and the bucket's there, and you need to cast over 3 conflicting currents and get it under that tree on the other side, to hold your rod tip up just to get that perfect swing through that zone. And those are places that I love fishing short, heavy heads like that. Sure. Like it's technical, it's engaging, it's meditative, it's all the things I look for in longer heads. So that was one of the first reasons that I designed that line, is because I do fish like that. Like I've
you have to on some.
Oh yeah,
rivers. That's kind of the beauty of it.
And I love spey casting. Yep. I like it in all different forms. I always like it to be challenging, though. Right? That's for me. That's a really big thing. So I like fishing lines like that in places where it's pretty much mandatory to fish a line like that, and you're really dealing with all kinds of obstructions and conflicting currents and
Sure.
all kinds of stuff. So I love that stuff.
So it's not this question is more just it's not to dictate or anything one way or another, but what length rod in that situation would you reach for first?
Well, anything from a 10'6" to, depending on what you're fishing for, 10'6" to 12. 13. Yeah, 13 maybe. Yep. Depending on how much brush you've got overhanging. Sure. and stuff like that.
So this line, this head, the Torrent.
Yes.
Again, going back to idealism here.
Yes.
What kind of, I know I'm trying to put a dot on a map, but like in general, what length rod would
those? Yeah, switch or small spey to short spey.
Did you just say switch?
Oh, I knew that was coming. I deserve it. Anywhere up to about 13 and a half feet, okay. I think would be pretty good. And the other thing about the line was I've had a lot of people who have wanted to take part in bridge and like fishing bridge lines, sure. But I haven't had a line that's necessarily been for everybody. Sure. And I think this is my first foray into making something like that. And I spent a good year on it and toying with it. And I think we've come up with something pretty cool. I hope people are going to like it. I really like it.
So let's go back to the caliper.
Yeah, totally.
This one.
Yes.
When you were building it.
Yeah.
You dissected previous heads of similar length and style for purpose, right?
For sure.
And came up with the taper of this line.
Yes.
How does it vary versus other heads of its length or even shorter that are out there?
I guess you know what? I don't look a ton at other lines when I design lines. Okay.
Well, I mean, as far as like not looking at other lines, but when you're piecing it together,
yes.
You're pulling from other lines.
Yeah.
Are you pulling from your own lines to?
Like pieces that I'm gluing together? Yeah, for sure. I'm making something on a graph that looks like it should work, and I'm gluing it together to see if it does. And
this one I felt like in that head length for what this one was designed to do, had an extremely different feel than what is otherwise currently kind of marketed out there.
Yeah. It's a more complex step taper.
Yeah.
There's a couple different tapers working in there.
Why'd you go to that length to create basically what I equate as a wheelbarrow in the head world?
I wanted a short head that hung in the air longer. I wanted a shorter head that turned over for longer, if that makes sense, to hang in the air longer. Yeah, well, increased distance potential.
Finesse.
Yeah, more of a finesse feeling, right? Those were the things I wanted. I wanted something that, just felt cool to cast. And so, basically, when you think about it, when a line's flying through the air and it's in a loop, it's actively flying, like air is going under the loop and going over the top of it, and that V shape is what's carrying.
Yep.
And so when that loop straightens out, that's generally when the line starts to fall, right? So more distance potential comes from a line that holds that V shape longer, right? Right? So if it can turn over a little slower and hold that shape a little longer, it'll go a little bit further.
But you're still trying to turn over heavier tips and flies with it.
Yes.
Which is where we are with other manufacturers' lines that are shorter, more compact.
Sure.
Simpler taper to them, just very, aggressive in the back.
Sure.
Or, thick in the back with super aggressive taper to it.
Yeah, for sure.
This head does not have that.
It's a little different. Yeah, it's a little different. I mean, it's...
you have to have that to some degree.
Yep. There's certain design features you can't get around.
Yep.
When you think about payloads, as far as like what's going to go on the front of the line, you need to have certain diameters to push those expected payloads. Yeah. And you, depending on your skill as a caster, you might be able to get away from that a little bit. But there is still certain diameters that are needed to push expectations of the... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can also accomplish strong turnover by having... a really aggressive taper at the end of the line right before it hits the payload, right? So there can be some stuff that goes on there, and I want to
be less elegant when it does that.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of ways. There's some different ways to get the same stuff done. I guess is what I'm saying.
Without question. That's why I'm asking you about this, because I think that the world as we know it currently, with what's out there in these shorter heads, is. I don't want to say that people haven't done their due diligence on design. Mm-hmm. But I think that the idea behind them has been short rods, heavy payloads, and just quick and easy casting.
Yeah.
And so in that, no one's expecting it to be finessey or elegant coming off of the rod tip.
Yeah.
When I cast this line, Eckley brought the head up.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want me to tell you this, but we went almost the whole week and we're like, this can't be a good line. Tim designed it. There's no way we're going to finish this piece of shit.
Yeah. 100%.
We waited until
late in the game.
Thursday, and he's like, dude, Tim's asking if we've tried this yet. We gotta tell him that we've tried it. So I grabbed it and went out there. I made 3 or 4 casts with it on a 13-foot 7-weight.
Right.
And I was like,
okay,
this is different.
Cool.
This is different. And, again, I'm pretty adept caster with that sort of stuff. And
doing it a long time.
And just to prove my point, I put it on a couple of our other customers' rods that were up there with us.
Right.
And you put one on your Instagram. That was his 5th cast with that head.
Amazing.
And going to what you were talking about, how the line carries itself through the air before it starts to descend.
For sure.
You can see it in the shape of that. You don't see a lot of Skagit heads carrying that shape with that much running line out the rod tip.
Awesome.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it was. And even Kevin even looked up river at me and was like, "Oh, when do these come?
Yeah. I don't even need one of these.
Never.
Yeah. I decided not to do it.
Yeah. He didn't hear from us, so he's abandoning the project.
Right.
Continue with what you were saying, because I think that's something that I want people that are going to listen to this to really understand when they come in asking.
And just to preface this, like, as a guy who designs lines, I'm not good with... There's a lot about line design I don't understand. Like, there's ideas you have with tapers, and when you glue them together and you cast them, sometimes something that looks so good on paper just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes something unexpected does. There's certainly, with spey lines, there are some, more so than overhead casting lines, there's some rules, they're more confined. They've got to be thicker in the back, thinner in the front. There's some rules there because you're using the water to cast. So there's some stuff going on there that there's some rules that you got to follow. But there's a lot I don't know, and there's a lot of also just like. It's why it takes me a year. There's a lot of Hail Mary stuff where it's like, well, what if we try this? What if we try that? And so the main thing for me is at the end of it, something good comes out of it.
Right.
But to be honest with everybody, like, I don't know that much.
You're pretty excited about this.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I really enjoyed. Finally got some factory prototypes. We've been fishing them. You guys took them. Was so great to hear, Kevin and Chris and you guys hear about that, and then to bring it to your spey event and have people like it so much. And just I've passed it around quite a bit. It just came back from a trip to the Charlotte, so I had a guy go up there with it. Those are really confined. Smaller streams. It's just tested really well. Awesome. And yeah, there was a probably quite a bit of fumbling around in the dark in the taper design on that one, but I'm just like everyone else. I'm learning, right? And trying to get better with each and every line that I make, and that's my journey too, right? So
yeah, totally.
And this one's been really cool. I'm really stoked about it, and I hope it makes a big splash. I hope people really enjoy it, and yeah, I think it's going to be cool. Yeah,
well, we're pumped.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah,
pumped is an understatement, and I hope you asked for a lot of inventory on this because we're going to blow.
Well, I got as much as I can do. Yeah, so there's going to be some. Yeah. More than I've ordered in the past. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good one.
We're going to blow through this so fast.
I love to hear that. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's amazing. I'm really glad to hear that.
Okay, so I love that we went into the technical side.
Yeah.
I want to cover full spectrum of bridge though.
Sure.
So I got 40 things going through my head.
Yeah.
I got 70 things I want to ask you about outside of those 40 things.
For sure.
Two of the last things I wanted to ask you about. One was, and maybe it's the most poignant to start with this, tournament rod.
Yeah.
So you said something earlier about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but choosing a line to fit your tournament rod. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you choose your tournament rod? Like, which comes first, the egg or the chicken? Is it you choose a head and then find a rod that's your tournament rod to throw that based on trying to win, like Spinorama?
Yeah, totally.
Or is it the other way around? Or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think a really safe way to choose a rod is to just find a rod that someone's won with before. And then that whole question, is my rod good enough? That's out of the, that's out. You don't even have to think about that anymore. Yeah. Okay. That's not to say that perhaps someone who wants to design a really neat, cool rod isn't going to do that. But if you were thinking about getting your first tournament rod, probably the safest thing to do would be like, what does like Gerard Downey use, or what does Travis Johnson use, or what does Tommy Arkvieslo use, or Geir Hansen, or like any, I'm going to leave names out here by accident, but like, there's just too many great, there's just so many great casters, right? But looking, if you're looking to get into tournament casting, one of the greatest things you can do is, it's no secret what people are using.
Sure.
And in fact, sometimes, a lot of these guys are working with these companies, so they're telling you what they're using, and it's there for you, right?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Even then, at that level, you're talking about the top 0.1% of spey casters in the world.
Uncommon dudes.
They can all pick up any rod and facilitate a cast of 150 feet or longer without even thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
But what really marries themselves to something where they feel that difference between this is good and this is great.
Yeah.
And this is great and this is perfect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Maybe, I remember there was a time in ski racing where determining how much bevel on the bottom of the ski boot needed to be, planed off in order to get perfect cant
right.
was the thickness of one sheet of Scotch tape.
It's crazy.
Like, at 70 miles an hour, you can feel the difference. Right?
Wow.
Okay, man. Good on you.
Yeah, totally. You can feel shit. Yeah.
Right on.
Right on.
Because I was just kind of scared shitless at that speed. But anyway, so, and the other part of this, and Travis will love this, is does how tall you are play a role in that?
I don't think it does. What I've learned, I think,
because Travis is by no means a center in the NBA.
We've seen people of, a spey-orama. We've seen folks of all different heights sort of do well. The guy who's won the most is I think 5'10".
Well, and that's really the point I'm getting at is.
Yeah, what I've learned, and it's been a hard lesson for me to learn. And it's a little humiliating to say that I still have to learn it more because I've been observing it for so long, is that I don't think it's necessarily a game of who's strongest, who's fastest, who's tallest. It's who operates the equipment the best. Yeah. Who pulls more
wasted energy, and
who gets the least amount of slack.
Yep.
Who pulls more tension into the system, the rod line system. I think this is where the rubber meets the road with this stuff. And unfortunately for me, that competition's videotaped a lot, so I have to go at all of the things that I have to observe a lot of my bad casting from the past. It's very much there. It shows me how far I've come, but it also shows me how far I have to go. Right. And so I'm still, I would classify myself as a basher, right? Like I when I'm not paying attention and I'm reverting to my natural what comes naturally to me, is I'm hitting hard, right? And the problem with hitting really hard can be maintaining perfect acceleration through your forward stroke.
To your stopping.
Exactly. Because if you hit 100% speed anytime before the end of that stroke, the line following the rod and the rod tip are going to start moving the same speed and tend to start to decelerate. And there's certain guys who can generate these really high tip speeds, and they can control that. I'm not one of those dudes. So,
So question.
Yes.
You said you have, and I'm literally just curious about this because of the level that you're talking about. Do you think you could get to that point? Maybe.
I think I just need to be. I think I need to, and this is the hardest thing for me, and it's funny, after a decade of doing this, it's still a struggle, is I need to get away from the way I'm casting and cast differently. I need to grow as a caster. I need to be smoother. I need to use a level of acceleration I can control in my forward casting stroke. And that's not to say when I'm at the lake practicing and there's no heat on, and I'm leaning into them, I can get 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 3 sometimes even. But I need to be getting 2 out of 3, right? And so it's that inconsistency that comes back to haunt you when there's a whole bunch of people watching, and it's not even, it's the worst crowd, because it's not even just people who don't know casting.
Who might be in the crowd? Is there anybody that we know?
These guys these are the guys. These guys, you're being watched by the best, and so
on the planet.
Yes, so it is, and that's that's a big adjustment too. I practice by myself for 4 months before I go.
Right,
and then you get down there, and for the first time in 4 months, someone who knows something about spey casting, just not some random dog walker at the lake, is watching you cast. And so, and it's a very supportive environment. The people are great, they're nice, and they help, and it's awesome. It's a great environment, but there's a certain level of stress that's just like, oh my God,
self-imposed.
Tommy's watching, fuck, right? You're the heroes and idols that you've had coming up through this. They're there, they're watching.
Totally.
And no one ever, it's just not the environment for disparaging. It's not that kind of deal. It's as great a group of people as you could ever find for that stuff. But if
it wasn't, this would have been dead.
Oh yeah,
dead in
sure.
the water.
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great group of people. Everyone's obsessed with casting. For a nerd like me, it's just like Disneyland. I'm seeing my people, right? Like they're all really into it, just like I am. And so, once a year we get this really cool thing where we all travel from different parts of the world and we all meet in one place, right? And it's, but there is a level of stress that comes with that. And then even worse for me is when they blow the whistle and say, okay, now cast, because practice and then doing it when they say, okay, go ahead and do it. Those are two different things. Right. One of the things I've learned about myself is like, I'm okay at casting. Right. I can cast a little bit. But where I need to make my improvements is as a competitor. It's about my ability to hold my ability to hold my composure when the heat is on. Right.
That's an athlete's struggle. It's sports psychology as it comes.
Well, and there's certain people that when that pressure is on, it brings the best out of them. They have these performances that are even greater than what they're typically doing.
There's very few that capture that moment.
There's very few, and I'm on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, shit, most of us are.
I am one that struggles. I'm one that gets nervous. Yeah. I am one that second guesses myself. Yeah. I'm one that does those things. But that's my journey too, right?
I think that's, and the reason I love that you said that is because I think, not that I guide a lot of steelhead anymore, because I won't go into that. There's just not that many to guide around here anymore, and I just don't feel good doing it.
Right.
But even when you're instructing, like my favorite thing instructing is when you've got more than one person that you're teaching at a time.
Right.
And you are standing on someone's shoulder, talking to them about some specific element of their cast that they need to refine.
Right.
And if you're really good at reading people's body language, you can tell the amount of attention that they have from you standing there.
Yeah.
And then you walk over to the other person, and in their head, theoretically, those eyes that you're talking about aren't on them anymore. And you see this relaxed figure make this more fluid stroke, and everything that you just talked about comes to fruition.
Right.
And you're like, yes! Yeah. And then all of a sudden you see him go, oh shit, he was watching. And their next cast sucks ass.
Tense right back up.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I asked you about that is because I think that for the average person just going out and fishing, whether it's a guided trip, whether it's with, oftentimes you get guys where you've got somebody who's been spey casting a long time, bringing a friend along to start. That level of apprehension of what eyes are on them is relative at every level within spey casting, right?
I think so. At the highest level and at the most basic level.
And at the brand new level, right? Yeah. And so, sports psychology was part of what I studied in college. And it's like, me as an instructor, you as an instructor, we as a shop, and in general, just kind of pushing this out to the public is like, you can't discount that when you have bad casts out there.
No, you can't. It's a part of it.
It is totally a part of it. You get people that try to find some little element of their equipment or depth of water or the tip is a little heavier than I'm used to, which, all of it's
those are true.
They're true and relevant. Yeah. But when it's a 4-inch difference in water and it's minuscule, but in general, really what it was is their buddy's not casting anymore and is standing behind them watching, and they all of a sudden feel the pressure of...
That can be a weird place to be.
It is a weird place to be. And I guess the only reason I say that is, man, you just really have to go back to what you talked about earlier, which is just understanding this is a process. And there is no judgment here.
No, and we wanted it to be hard. That's why we picked it. That's why we picked it. So we embrace that. Totally. We say, and in a lot of ways, my journey to tournament spey casting was, I want it to be hard. Let's make it as hard as it can be. That seems really hard. It's hard.
That's what we did when we were on the river.
Yeah. Let's make it as hard as possible. Yeah. And for me at this point in time, going there and doing that is like really hard. Yeah. And it's a great challenge to me and what I'm comfortable with. So, in that spirit, bring it on. Let's make it as hard as we can. Right. And that's my take on it. That doesn't need to be other people's, we're all at a different part in our journey, and that's just where I'm at. But,
so tournament rod, you did a good job sort of
they're out
towing
there.
Around that subject. You didn't come to a finite point.
Yeah.
Somebody walks into your shop up there in BC and says, I'm getting into spey casting right now.
Right.
What questions do you ask them?
Where are you going to fish? What you going to fish for? When you going to fish? Yeah.
How often?
Well, yeah, maybe a bit. Yeah, seasons, yeah. Most of it's just when, where, what. Sure. Those are the three. And if you tell me...
What if you don't know?
Well...
Because if you're new to spey casting, you probably really don't understand the places this rod's going to take you.
If you don't know, then it's a 13-foot 7-weight.
Yeah. There it was. Boom. All right, we cut 20 minutes out of the podcast right there.
That's your 30-06 in BC. You can use that. You take that wherever you want.
That was perfect.
Not too long, not too short, not too heavy, not too light.
Difference between 7 and 8.
For me, is working in the shop, I tend to say, if you're just fishing steelhead,
is it
steelhead with
specific?
No, not necessarily. But if you're fishing, like in my zone, it's like, if you're fishing steelhead mostly, with a chance of bull trout, or fishing, like,
just if it's mostly steelhead,
fair enough. If you're fishing for steelhead only, a 7's probably going to cut it.
Yep.
If it's your first two-handed rod and you're like, I like salmon fishing too, I'm probably going to ask you to get it. I'm probably going to push you towards an 8. And that's just if you decide
salmon meaning Chinook.
Chum, Chinook, coho. Like, it just, if there's, not that coho are really huge, but I mean, if there's, they can be really big, but chum, stuff like that.
Sure.
Fall Chinook, you hook one of those, you're going to be happy you had an 8, in my mind. So I think if it's just steelhead, a 7. I think if it's steelhead with a side of salmon, then I tend to go 8.
Is there anything in that framework, like, I want to dive just a little bit deeper into that, because in my opinion, like, the 8 weight, if you were to stay within the same brand,
right,
you're going to grain size up your head. Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes not.
Yeah.
On your casting stroke.
Sure.
Knowing you might be throwing a little bit bigger flies, does the 8 weight turn over theoretically, or is that?
I think that's like a lot of that has to do with casting technique.
Of course.
But I think you will have more ability to perhaps use a heavier tip.
And
you
might a little bigger fly
for sure. Yeah, you dig it out of the water.
On grain weight of the head.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I tend to value fishing a slightly heavier rod than a slightly lighter rod.
Why?
Just because we don't have a ton of fish out there anymore, and so it's good to get them in quick. And what I would say is for the first 10 seconds to 1 minute of hooking that fish, it ain't gonna matter if you got a 1 weight. You're not stopping that fish. It's doing whatever it's doing. You're hanging on.
Right.
But when you get to the end of the fight, and there's that part of the fight where you almost get him in, and then he goes out again, using a heavier rod can cut that time down. And it's important to get these fish on their way with as little damage to them as we can do to them. So I'm finding nowadays that, I like using there was a point there where a lot of people are going to 6s and there's places where the fish aren't that big and you can do that. But generally, I guess I would say I'm seeing these days, I'm putting a little bit of value on just going a little bit more value and going a bit heavier, just so at the end of that fight, because to be clear, like I said before, the first part of the fight, if it's a hot fish, it doesn't matter what you have. You're hanging on. He's jumping, running. You're doing everything to make sure that reel doesn't overspool, and when he's taken, you're giving. And when he's not taking, you're bringing line in. And but at the end of the fight, when the fish is near exhaustion, I think that little bit of extra rod weight can just help kind of get that fight over a little bit quicker.
Hands down.
Yeah. In my mind, anyway.
No. I think that's I couldn't agree more. I think the days of underweighting the rod for the fish is it's fun to feel the cork separate in your hand and stuff like that. But
these fish are super important, and there's not a lot left in a lot of these places that we go, and we owe it to them to be as easy on them as we can
expeditious as possible in the engagement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally.
Let's be nice to them.
Yep. Okay. So, how's your fatigue level?
I'm still going.
You hanging in there?
I'm hanging in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple other things.
Okay.
One is you have just recently come into a new distribution model for
C&D rods, as we had chatted about,
which is they've been around for a long time.
Yeah, I think since '93, like going back, 93, 95, mid '90s, anyway.
Almost a cultish rod following in the spey world.
Definitely,
not every shop had them.
No,
many shops didn't ever really know about them.
Yeah, that's true.
We were a dealer when we first opened because I had a couple.
Yeah.
They're coming back.
Yeah. I mean, they've been in and out.
Matt's kind of excited over there. He just about jumped through the window.
Yeah. I mean, they're amazing rods. They have been amazing rods.
So, again, this could go deep, but really what I want to hear out of you is why you chose to get in bed with C&D on distribution for North America. At
the moment, still figuring logistics out. Early in the game, to
have them in the States.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
okay, cool. And two, kind of the history of C&D.
Yeah,
of what, at least as you know of it. Yeah,
for sure. So C&D stands for Custom Nobuo Design. Nobuo Nodera is the chief, the man behind the designs. Yep. He is a Japanese fella. He fell in love with salmon fishing and moved to Scotland and ended up working for Daiwa UK. Okay. While he was there, he basically ascended the ranks there and became one of their rod designers and designed some really cool rods while he was there. He then basically went off on his own and started C&D. One cool fun fact, I think the first C&D rod that came out, Yvon Chouinard was the first guy to have one.
Nice.
And it just sort of went from there. And Nobuo, genius rod designer, like always on the cutting edge. It started, I believe, with the Expert and the Custom series. I think those were the first that I saw, followed by the Specialist series. Yep. So we had the Skagit Specialist, the Thompson Specialist, the North Fork Specialists, along with some other rods as well. Yep. And then the Black Spey came after that. Mm-hmm. And then the Solstice series came after that, which is a real favorite for a lot of people. I have a couple Solstices at home, and they're amazing rods.
Kind of sad. I sold mine when we opened the store.
Oh, Lord.
Just to kind of purge the 180 rod quiver that I had at home.
Really
didn't have
rods.
As emotional attachment to it 10 years ago as I would now.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I had the Skagit Specialist.
Too. Great rod.
Fantastic. Amazing rod.
Yeah.
Totally different feel in those rods than anything else that was on the market at that time.
Yeah. I mean, he's just a very incredible rod designer. Yeah. And so after the Solstices, I believe we kind of went to the I-Spays. Mm-hmm. And then out when the I-Spays, when we came out of that sort of era, it went to the BVGTs. And those are the rods that...
Was there a dip in, and I'm asking literally out of my own curiosity, when we let go of them as a dealer, it was mostly because distribution kind of went void for a while.
Yeah, I think there's been some ups and downs. Yeah. Lee Davidson at Snake River Outfitters took care of them for a long time.
He was who we were dealing with at the time.
And then a good buddy of mine, Tyler Kushner, during the BVGT era, he was sort of, I think, the North American guy. Yep. But there's been ups and downs here, not here. There's just been some, there's been
So why the resurgence now? What's going on?
The BVGTs were designed. They included a couple tournament rods. Some really good ones. One called the C&D F1.
Who were throwing those?
Tommy Arkvisla.
Okay.
And Jarle Strandberg.
Okay.
And Geir Hansen, to name a few.
Yeah, a couple of
these guys are incredible casters. Absolutely amazing casters. And amongst others, we're using them. And they were amazing rods. They made a big impact in the tournament scene. Made some extremely long casts with them. And then a few years passed, and Geir got together with Nobuo, and technology had obviously advanced since the BVGTs came around, and there was some different ideas and materials they were able to work with, and they, between Nobuo and Geir and probably some other folks too, they came up with this Gravity series.
Yep.
And I don't know, they're just some of the nicest rods I've ever cast. So it was easy for me to make the decision because I liked the product a lot.
There was obviously a need on C&D's part to re-engage in distribution or something like that.
Yeah, I think I think we want them in the North American market. I think,
totally.
Yeah, I think they have value here in the North American market.
Absolutely.
And
where are they manufactured?
They're manufactured in South Korea.
Okay.
I believe they're made with a proprietary Japanese carbon.
Okay.
And they're distributed to me out of Norway, I believe. Yeah. So the rods are extremely light, extremely powerful. They track extremely straight. They recover incredibly quickly. The blank diameters are incredibly slim for the weights that they are. I think they're remarkable.
What is the bandwidth, or what is the representation that they're going to have here in the States? Like, are there going to be 20 rods to choose from, 5 rods to choose from?
Well, they're adding rods.
And what ones should we focus on?
Yeah, I mean, here in North America, I think our big guys are like the 12-foot 2.8, the 12-foot 7, the 12-foot 7, 8, the 13-foot 4, 8, and probably at the, there'll be the odd guy that wants a 16 or a 15-footer, but there's a 14-foot 8. That's an incredible rod. Very, very unique. Very, very cool.
Making a king rod?
There is a 15-foot 11. Which they use for extremely,
Cola 40-pound Atlantics.
Which they use to great effect in Norway on extremely large salmon. Would be up for it, no question.
Yeah, no problem.
But I think, your typical 7, 8, 12 and a half to 14
so we got 4 to 5 rods we're going to need to really focus on.
I think they will have, there's
how many different models are there?
Oh, hard to come off the top with that.
Just in the Gravity series.
I think there's probably a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, there's probably a dozen, including single-handers and stuff like that.
Stay on the spey.
Yeah, I think that's where we are. But enough to cater to just about any taste, I think. And I think there will be more as time goes on.
Sure.
But I think the current lineup, it looks to be, pretty relevant for what we do here. And everyone that I've, they sent me some samples. I think it was probably starting, I don't know if it was almost 6 months ago. And I started, because I teach so much, I would bring those rods. One of my favorite ways to test stuff, whether it's lines or rods, is to bring them to lessons.
Sure.
And at the end of the lesson, I'll say, hey, we're off the clock. We're we're off the clock. But could you just try this and just tell me what you think of it, right? And
You're a pusher.
yeah, well, you know what?
In the dealer.
What I think of a rod matters the least. right? So what matters the most is who's buying the rod, who's using the rod of all skill levels, of all stripe, the spey caster of all skill levels and stripes. So I have a unique situation as an instructor to have access to those folks all the time. And I found that amongst a very broad spectrum of skill levels and experience levels, these rods they tested really well. People really liked them, right? And they wanted to know what they were and where they were from and all that. So that showed me, a big part of whether I decide to do something or not is, time spent letting other people cast stuff and really see it, right?
So do you feel like, again, staying in that small spectrum that is PNW sort of focused, let's take that, was it 12.77? 12.78? Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there's a pretty broad spectrum of heads that rod's going to accommodate?
Yeah, I think you'd probably be looking...
Not necessarily just in length and so much, but as also grain weight size.
Oh, they have pretty wide grain windows, definitely. I like that. Yeah, they do. That particular rod, you could go like the 12-foot 7.7. Yeah. You could be down towards 450. Yeah. Or you could be 525, like in a Skagit sense. And then the tip strengths on them are pretty good. They do well with a rod that long. You're never going to want to strap a 70-foot head on it. But with my tributary, 6'7" at 42 feet, really nice mini long belly setup. Nice. If you want to try that stuff, certainly long enough and strong enough to handle a winter tide. And the torrent is bonkers on it. Yeah, it's really, really good. So yeah, no, I think they have wide grain windows. I think most good rods do.
And that's, you're an instructor, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of my biggest issue with trying to help people choose a spey rod is, I know your buddy tells you that he likes this rod, right? And that buddy tells you he likes that rod, but right. How do they cast? You can't really probably determine that. Meaning the person that's going to buy the rod, you can't assess your friend's abilities.
No.
I like rods where you can put them in somebody's hand and without a ton of instruction on power, you can have those rods accommodate a wide variety of casting strokes.
Well, I was just going to say that. So outside of line weight, grain weight, these rods are friendly.
Well, that's what I mean.
Easy to cast.
It's a fork in the road, right? Because if someone's a real light caster, you can push the grain window,
right?
And that light caster will be able to feel that rod load and bring it to a stop and
no question
accomplish what they want.
No question.
The puncher, the basher, as you call yourself, pull down that grain window towards the bottom and let them bash it, but the rod still be able to accommodate both the stroke and the grain window.
Absolutely. Sorry, just going to renew my
Yeah, no problem. That's just that's one of the things that for trying to figure out what rods we put on the wall in here is paramount to me, because nobody. I'm with you. Very few people make a bad product.
Yeah, they're mostly good.
Everything out there is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But finding rods that can accommodate the broad swath of people that come in the door is the challenge sometimes.
It is, and I would say these rods really live up to that. They do short stroke well. They do longer strokes well. They do longer heads well. They do shorter heads well. They're just. I think there's something everyone can appreciate.
It's a user-friendly tool.
100%. Awesome. And they're incredibly light.
They are.
They're incredibly light. So that's a really neat thing with them as well. But I just think they're exceptional rods, and I think they're a great fit for what we do here.
Awesome.
And I think they're hopefully going to make a pretty big splash.
Well, I think the last thing I wanted to ask you about, so going from that point there, the part that we're catching you off guard with, which I'm super excited about. So we're going to have you wet wade Puget Sound here in a little bit because it's warm. Look at it. It's wicked nice. And we'll have a couple more beers that will numb the cold water a little bit. I did bring waders for me, but just to be in spirit, I'll wet wade with you.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that, Dave. I think you'll be wet wading alone. Yeah.
Come on.
I'll cast offshore.
You useful little buck. Come on, man.
I'm a wimp.
I'm kidding. It'll be like ankle at most. Maybe not even that.
Yeah. I'll stand on shore.
But So I want to go cast some of the rods and some heads and just kind of complete this on that.
Sure.
But the thing that we were talking about off mic earlier that I wanted to just kind of finish up with bridge.
Right.
And our I think we have some commonality in how we view being engaged in this sport with the fish that we choose to engage with, with the environment that we 100% rely upon for our livelihood. You were talking about you see in the future bridge having something that is going to give back.
Yeah, definitely. I want to, within the next year or so, work in basically a percentage of every sale that goes to a worthy cause. And in particular, I would like to identify small grassroots groups that aren't having the light shine, that are doing great work, but not necessarily super well known. And I'd like to shine a light on those groups.
Any in particular up there in your neck of the woods?
Well, I won't throw anything out just yet, just because I don't know how that all pans out. But in general, I think there's a number of small grassroots groups that are doing some really great work that deserve money, and they deserve to be featured. And I think it would be really neat once a year to write a check to a group like that and maybe go out to where they are and film what they're doing and show people that this is where your money went and maybe why these groups are worth a little bit more money than that. And if you're looking to donate maybe a little bit more, why these groups would be worthy of your money. And that could be old growth protection. It could be water protection. That's fish protection as well. So it doesn't have to be the traditional, like the super traditional sources we see, and
specific,
and not to say that those groups aren't doing great things, and not to say we won't maybe do with them as well. But I just think it would be really neat to feature some really cool grassroots groups that are doing some great work and just ones that maybe you don't hear about much, and maybe ones that it would be great to just shine the light on them and expose them to a greater number of potential donors, right?
Sweet.
That's the idea.
No, that's great. I think
who knows where it goes, but that's the idea at the moment.
It's a moving target.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can't just lay down a definitive and expect to ride that wave forever, right?
And just like everything, it's going to morph.
That's exactly right. Everything's going to morph and change. And, I mean, for us, I know the people who listen to us understand where we are on environmental issues and the importance of our partnership with the companies that we have in that sort of like-minded way of doing business is critical. And you said it earlier. I don't think we're going to have a choice on this.
No.
In the future. I think I'm going to let you put it in your words because I thought it was perfect.
Well, I just think that we're all depending on environmental protection to make sure that these fisheries are there for us to, this is our business. At the very root of things. So, I think in the future, I think if you are running a business that's depending on the health of these fisheries to support your business and what you're doing, it makes a lot of sense to give some money to make sure that stuff keeps going. Yeah. And I think, in fact, it may be mandatory that companies do that in coming years. I think consumers are going to start looking to see who is giving back and who is caring about this stuff, right? And, I just think it's super important, right? And for me, it's finally with my business, it's come to a point where I think it's something we can work in. Cool. And it's always been in the plans, but it's something we certainly want to do. And we'll be looking at it for sure.
Awesome.
And I depend on healthy salmon and steelhead fisheries to support what it is I do for a living, both with my lines and with the shop and with everything else. So it's in my very best interest that they're is some support for the mechanisms that are allowing those things to continue, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
For sure.
And as I said before, I think as time goes on and as more companies climb on to those ideas, that consumers are going to start to look for that. They're going to start looking at where can I buy it, but where can I also feel good about buying it? Right. You know, if I can get this product from this guy or this guy, well, this one, at least some money's going back into this. I mean, that can be, if the products are equal or similar or whatever it is, you know, and I'm not going to get into specifics about companies and products, but we don't need to. But I think that could become a defining factor in the future about, you know, where that consumer's money goes, right?
I sort of hope it does, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Me too.
I think, I think any of us that are giving back, that's awesome.
I mean, I think short term, those that are out front with that messaging and wearing it on their shirt sleeve as ominously as they can, probably may pay short term detriment in their business model. But I agree with you. I think that as we move forward, half a generation to come, that landscape of who's buying what and why and where is going to change dramatically.
Yeah, and especially why.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You know, if you are an angler, you are likely concerned about the state of fisheries.
Yep.
So it would make sense that your purchases you would hope that they would, you know, cleave to the companies that are giving back to the resource that we love so much. You'd hope, yeah. But as time goes on, we're seeing more of that. I know you're seeing more of it.
For sure.
We're seeing more companies climb on. The more the better, right? And and that way too. It's like if you're giving back a little bit, it's like more sales is more good, right?
Yeah.
Like which is great for everybody.
Right.
It's a great way to feel good about doing a lot of sales.
I was going to say it's the one way consumerism actually feels okay, because then you're actually putting dollars on something that is protecting or enhancing or bettering something that we hope to engage in often, that, you know, you lay in bed at night dreaming about, even though you only get to fish it once a year, twice a year.
Right.
It's your happy place.
Yeah. You want it to be there, right?
You want it to be there.
Right.
Without your happy place, where do you go?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So it's important, right? It's important. And these environments that we're visiting, they're sensitive and they're under threat in a lot of cases.
Yep.
And they need our help, right? So it's good to do what we can to do that. So hoping to in the future to incorporate that in, and I shouldn't say hoping, we're gonna. You know, it's not about hoping; it's gonna happen.
Well, we'll compound that.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So whatever you do, we'll end up doing something on top of it. We do anyway.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah,
it means that they're, you know, our fishing
more better for everybody, right?
Double the impact from each sale,
which is amazing, right? Yep. So that's great. So so that's
awesome.
So there it is.
Well, dude, I think we're over 2 hours.
We
2:18. We still have to go wet wave the sound and make some casts.
So you'll wet wave the sound, and I'll make some casts.
Yeah. Just not to catch you off guard, I wanted to take an opportunity to. Did you bring some of the torrent heads with you? Or
I didn't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I didn't know we were casting.
No,
I had no idea.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay. Go on. Go on. Yeah.
I wish you could see his face. His eyes actually opened up and looked at me when he said that.
Go on. Yeah.
We've got a couple of guys that want to try out some rods because we've got some trips coming up.
Right.
Guys are going on, and it's not often that we get to stand next to a piece of water and just cast.
That's true.
It's all we want to do is just go casting.
Yeah. So let's do it.
If you're all right with that, we'll grab some lunch and we'll
sounds great.
Go sit down next to the water.
Yeah.
Listen to waves roll. And,
sounds good.
And throw some rods.
I love it. That'd be great.
All right?
Yeah, I think I can deal with that. Yeah.
Okay. Super low impact.
Yeah, it's super low impact.
We'll even roll a piece of driftwood down so you can sit and cast.
That's fine. Yeah.
Right on.
Cool.
Right on. Look at that.
Right on
Lisa
schedule.
Showed up.
Yeah.
unprompted exactly at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Tim?
Yes.
Man,
yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for putting all this together. And damn it, Tim. Thank you for doing this, man.
Oh, dude, more than happy, and love your shop, and great to actually come down here. I've known you guys for a while now and never seen the shop, and it's a beautiful shop. And thanks for having me.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, I can't wait to push this out there, and
awesome.
Can't wait to get the torrent in the store and in people's hands, and the C&D rod.
Looks like August for the line.
Okay,
so it should be right before fall steelhead and trips start, and so I think it'll be right there. Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, and I'm working on a tributary short too. So it's a head that'll be 10 feet shorter than the tributary.
So slower. So whole freaking podcast to get that little.
Yeah. I'm still fiddling with that one. Okay. That one's, it's not quite there yet, but it's getting there.
Losing.
Yeah.
You want to listen to this one all the way to the end. There's a little
nugget in there.
He's still losing parts of heads due to failed Zapagap.
Exactly.
More from aggressive casting from my friends. I never broke one.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
He still hears about that to this day.
Tim, awesome, buddy.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks for tuning in.
Let's go,
okay,
let's do it.